We're going to be taking a look at Bring Science Alive in the elementary classroom, K-5, and just making sure that you are comfortable with all of the resources and ready for the school year to start, hopefully not too soon for most of you. Unfortunately, we can't all be like Brenda and Mary Kate where we don't start until September, but at least you guys all have a couple more weeks. So I am Laura Obert. I will be going through the session with you guys today. A little bit of background information about myself. I taught 5th grade science and social studies, and I used TCI in my classroom. Completely fell in love with it. And so I've been with the company now for about 7 years and excited to be here with you today. And then we also have Kelsey. Kelsey, I'll let you introduce yourself.
Hey everyone. Yeah, my name is Kelsey Moore and I am a former teacher as well. Been with TCI for about 4 years. Same thing as Laura, really just changed the way that I taught. TCI did. And so I'm excited to be able to be here with you today.
Thank you. So Kelsey is going to be helping out, and she's going to be taking a look at the chat, which we had a bunch of you guys already come in on chat and share where you're from and what grade level you teach. But just a couple housekeepings on top of that. If you haven't already done so in chat, can you please set the settings to everyone? That way, everybody's going to be able to see the responses and the questions that you have. And then we do also have, if you look on the bottom controls of your Zoom, we have Q&A, which is going to be a great place for any specific program content type questions. We're going to ask that you put those in there because that way it won't get lost in the stream of the chat for us. And so Kelsey and I will be able to better address any specific like program or content type questions that you have. If you're responding to any questions Kelsey and I had, you can feel free to do those in chat. And then just so that you know as well, it's going to be muted, so you're not going to be able to communicate to us unless you're typing in chat or Q&A. All right, so what we're going to be doing today, we have a nice hour together, and in that hour, we're going to be navigating TCI and the Bring Science Alive platform. We're going to be taking a look at how you can go ahead and prep and plan and teach with TCI, and then what assigning assessing is going to look like in the TCI classroom as well. Kelsey's going to be sharing this in chat with you, but what we have is we have an explorer's guide, which is going to be a really, really helpful resource. If this is your first year or second year teaching with TCI, this is going to be a great resource that you can print out or you can save to your desktop. That's just going to go through a lot of the content that we're going to take a look at today. So do take some time to take a look at that and see if that's a beneficial resource for you to save for yourself. So again, talking about the Bring Science Alive in the elementary classroom, these are our K-5 NGSS designed Bring Science Alive programs. So depending on which grade level you're teaching is going to depend on which one of these programs you're going to be utilizing. For today's sake, we're going to be taking a look at a 3rd grade classroom. And so we're going to go into the 3rd grade program. Just so you know, all of the resources that we're going to be taking a look in 3rd grade are going to be accessible to all of you K-5. So even though we're looking in 3rd grade, you're going to have access to all of those same great resources that we're going to take a look at today. And then what does it look like in terms of teaching with TCI? What is available for you? So all of your resources as a teacher are going to be available in the digital platform inside of your TCI account. If your district has adopted the students to have a digital resource, they also have access to the same resources, most of the same resources that you do as a teacher. Additionally, we have science journals. Science journals are going to be, they're consumable, and they're going to include both the expository text as well as any investigation or like notebook question types of responses that we want the students to be utilizing. It's all going to live inside one journal. And so we're going to take a look at what the print journal is going to look like as well as the digital journal. We do have lesson guides, which is going to be a great teacher resource if you're a little bit more traditional like me and you like to have that paper pencil, something that you can manipulate and write on or add your many, many Post-it notes. I wish I could show you my desk. I have Post-it notes everywhere because that's just how I live. And so if that's you, you have lesson guides available as well. They can be purchased with your district, or you also can print them out inside your TCI teacher resource. The next thing that you're going to see here are picture cards. These are fantastic. They are already on kind of a harder cardstock and laminated, so they're going to last you a really long time. But a lot of times when you're going to utilize the picture cards within your investigations is when we're taking a look at an investigation that maybe the students aren't able to replicate in the classroom, like if they're having to pull data from the ocean. So that's when these picture cards and these data sets are going to come into place, and it'll direct you throughout your investigations if those are going to be utilized at all. And then we also have our material kits, which if you have not already seen these, this is one of my favorite things within Bring Science Alive. I don't know about you, but before we were teaching with TCI, I would open up my closet and I had about 50 shoebox size bins that had or was missing a whole lot of materials that I was supposed to use for my investigations. So the way that TCI has designed this is you'll see we have large bin. Depending on your grade level, you could have anywhere from like 2 to 3 or 4 bins. But it is going to be labeled which unit that bin is for. And then when you open up the bin inside, you're going to see these already pre-packaged plastic bags. And there are stickers that live on the outside of these bags. So these stickers will let you know when you pull it out, it's going to say this is unit 1, lesson 1, and then it'll list all of the materials that you need ready to go. So it's truly grab and go. And it also makes it really easy for you to kind of refill this up either after the investigation or at the end of the school year, if you're trying to give yourself a head start before summer break or before the year begins, to refill it and refresh it so that everything really is easily accessible, grab and go, saving you some time, because we know that teaching science in the elementary classroom can be challenging because we often don't have enough time to sufficiently do so. So these are all of the materials that are available to you in your program. What does TCI Bring Science Alive look like in the classroom? So as I mentioned, it is an NGSS designed program. Before Next Gen was even finalized, TCI was in the process of building our very first science, and we did so alongside of Next Gen. Anytime in the early phases that they kind of revised the standards, TCI then went in and revised so that we were meeting the needs of the next generation science standards. So when you come in and you're doing a lesson or a unit of instruction within TCI, you're going to be exploring problems and phenomena with your students. We offer phenomena at the unit level as well as at the lesson level. So we're going to take a look at that today and what that looks like. Making sure that we have logical sequencing going through and that we're going to be building upon and scaffolding the instruction for the students. One of the biggest things is we want students to problem solve and be able to figure things out on their own. Long gone are the days where we're just going to give students steps and procedures to do science instruction where they're following exactly what should be done. And then they're like, oh, look, the light bulb lights up now. Rather than just telling them how to do something, we want to give students the ability to have access to the materials, to explore, and then to problem solve themselves so that they are truly thinking like a scientist. And then we make sure that we have 3-dimensional performances that are going to be embedded and built in here throughout the program for you. So we're going to be taking a look at what all of this looks like actually live in the program here in just a couple of moments. To look at how we've structured everything, again, tying back to that next generation science standards, you can trust that the program you're going to be using is going to meet NGSS's needs if that's what your state is utilizing. So taking a look here, as mentioned, we start every single one of our units with an anchoring phenomena, which is going to be the unit level phenomena. And then we're going to make sure that you have all of the performance expectations, which are like the standards that you're teaching with your students, as well as the disciplinary core ideas, the cross-cutting concepts, and the science and engineering practices. So all of the 3 dimensions that Next Gen wants to make sure is being covered in instruction is taken care of, and you have access to all of these standards based on the unit as well as on specific lessons. So how is that structured inside TCI? We wanted to make sure that we give you the tools to be successful in instruction of science with your students, as well as understanding and respecting the fact that finding time to teach science in the elementary classroom can be really challenging. So what TCI has done is we have developed flexible lessons. What that looks like is you're going to have a variety of different tools at your fingertips to decide how and where and when you're going to be teaching these lessons, as well as if you need enrichment pieces to dive deeper in the content with your students, as well as a variety of formative and summative assessments. So all of this is going to be available to you for you to kind of mix and match. You don't have to do the same thing for every lesson or every chapter of instruction, but rather kind of taking a look and saying, okay, for this standard, I know my kids need to go a little deeper because this is the first time they're being exposed to this standard. And then you might come across another standard where you're like, okay, we don't really have a lot of time right now, and they have a really good foothold on this. So we're going to do a super simple science, which is going to save us a little bit of time for science instruction this lesson. You have the ability to kind of figure out what's going to work best for you and your kids and to mix and match and make it meet the needs in your classroom. So what we're going to do is we're going to actually get to go live now and take a look at what this looks like in the program. So as I mentioned, I am in a third grade program. Again, the standards are going to be different if you teach something other than third grade, but all of the great resources that you're going to take a look at today are going to be available K-5 for you. When you first log in and you go to the content, which is basically like your table of contents, what you're going to come to in your teacher subscription is the 4 units of instruction. If you are kindergarten, you have 3 units of instruction. I think K2 has 3 units, and then grades 3-5 have 4 units of instruction in science. And so from here, this is where you're going to be working as the teacher in your TCI program, and you're going to be planning and preparing for the students. For today's purposes, we're going to take a look at Unit 4, life cycles. A couple of the things to point out that you are going to see on this first landing page here is it's going to give you the background and the storyline. So while we are introducing and exposing students to anchoring phenomena throughout, we want to make sure that we're making it meaningful and relevant, and that we're making them engaged in what they're learning. So what you're going to see here at the unit level is you're going to see the storyline the students are going to be introduced to, that's kind of giving them a teaser of the concepts and the content they're going to be learning throughout this unit. We do so through a video that is really informative and interactive with kids. So you can go ahead and show the video.
Hi, my name is Marcus. I'm the editor-in-chief for Science Monthly. I went to Ecuador to learn about different plants and animals there. I saw frogs, insects, trees, cacti, capybaras, and many other organisms. I observed that male frigate birds use their gular sacs to attract females. Soon after, chicks hatched. I saw strange cacti of different heights. I also found 2 frogs that looked very similar, but only one was poisonous. How do organisms use their traits to survive? What happens when traits differ among organisms of the same species? As a science writer for Science Monthly, you've been assigned a feature on Ecuadorian wildlife. Investigate traits of different organisms and tell us your findings. I look forward to working with you.
So the videos are really well done, I think, and they're going to be introducing to your students what they're going to be covering and learning, as well as tasking them with the role they're going to carry out and take on in the classroom. So in this unit, students are going to become journalists, and they're going to have to be able to identify and explain how 2 members of a species can look the same but be different. So as we saw in the video, we're taking a look at those 2 frogs, but one of them is poisonous. And so students are going to have to be able to explain and identify that anchoring phenomenon. So again, when I drill into the unit level, I see that I still have access to that video we just saw. It's going to give me my performance expectations, so the standards I'm covering throughout this unit of instruction, background on my storyline, the anchoring phenomena, which is that unit level phenomena where these 2 frogs look the same, but only one of them is poisonous, as well as my 3-dimensional learning that's taking place. These you can hover right over, and it'll identify the science and engineering practices, cross-cutting concepts, and disciplinary core ideas that you're going to be covering throughout this unit. If you want to go deeper at the unit level with the next gen standards, you can come right up here where it says next gen correlations, and it's going to give you a little bit deeper information, something that you might want to be able to print out if you want to. We'll also make sure that we're incorporating on top of our next generation science standards, also any ELA or math standards that are going to be covered throughout this unit. So if you are integrating your science instruction into ELA or math, you have these standards listed for you as well. So that is all available at that unit level. The next place that you're going to take a look when you're planning at the unit level is this orange teacher planning box. You'll see it says right here, it's not available to you, to students. The first section is our unit highlights. This is a great place to visit because it's going to let you know if there's any lessons that require advanced prep. So if you are having to get any information, or like, let's say you're having to grow seeds for one of your lessons, and you wanted to give yourself time, or you need to give yourself time to do so, you can go in here and it'll let you know any advanced prep that needs to take place. The next thing that I love is it'll tell you what not to miss. Again, we understand that finding time to teach science in the elementary classroom can be really, really difficult. We know that math and ELA are going to take up majority of your time. And so what we're going to do here is we're going to identify like what you absolutely can't skip over if you're going to make sure that you are hitting all of the standards that your district and next gen says you need to hit. So here in this unit of instruction, if I scroll down, I see that we actually have 7 lessons Don't let that make you nervous. TCI's verbiage of lesson is not like what I think of in a day. I think of like what I'm teaching for the day. Our lessons are really more like chapters. So we have 7 lessons or chapters of instruction here. And this lets me know that there are 5 lessons that I absolutely have to hit on. So if I know I am really tight for time, I can take a look at this and I know which 2 lessons without this unit of instruction I can skip over. And I know without a doubt that I'm still meeting those performance expectations and the next gen standards that I need to hit. The next place you're going to take a look at here is 3-dimensional learning. So the 3-dimensional learning listed here is going to break it down by that lesson level or that chapter level. We're going to identify the performance expectations you're hitting on each lesson, as well as the disciplinary core idea, cross-cutting concepts in science and engineering practices. So that will break it down by lesson of instruction for you. As mentioned, we introduced the anchoring phenomena or that unit level phenomena at the beginning of instruction, but we don't want to just introduce that to students once and then come back after we teach 7 lessons and be like, hey, what can you tell me? So what we want to make sure that we're making connections to that anchoring phenomena throughout our instruction in the unit. And to do so, we want to support you and the kids as well. So taking a look at explaining this anchoring phenomena, we're going to let you know as the teacher exactly how what the students are being taught is going to tie back in and connect to that anchoring phenomena. And we give students an opportunity to reflect back after every lesson as well. Last thing we're going to take a look at is the unit progression. So this is going to let you know how we're going to progress throughout the performance expectations throughout this unit of instruction. When you scroll down, you notice right here it says unit projects. So we do have, and the very first thing you see here is making sense of that anchoring phenomenon. We don't want to just introduce the phenomena to students and then forget to talk about it again until the very end of the unit. So this is going to be present for you to see throughout your instruction. And when we take a look at making sense of this phenomena, you'll see that the very first section here, again, students have access to this video, so do you as the teacher, also giving you that storyline. And then we want the students, after watching this video and learning what that anchoring phenomena is, to discuss what they already know with you and what they wonder or what questions they have. So students will have an opportunity before you start teaching in this unit to write down what they know about the phenomena and what they wonder or what questions they have. Next, as you scroll down, you see this is where students can capture their information, gather evidence to support what they learned in each of these lessons to help them answer and explain that anchoring phenomena. So after every lesson of instruction here, your students can come back into either their digital journal or the print journal and can capture what they learned and provide evidence to come back in and support that anchoring phenomenon. At the end of your instruction, so once you've done all 5 or 7 lessons in that unit, or however many lessons you have in there, then the students are going to be able to come in. Now they've been given all the information that they need. They are able to write a claim to answer and support, to answer that anchoring phenomena, and then they're going to provide evidence and reasoning in there. So we do have students, claim evidence reasoning is something that Next Gen really focuses on. And we do have the elementary level learners doing so. In kindergarten, you're going to have opportunities where students sometimes are going to make a claim and then have to provide reasoning, or sometimes they're going to share evidence and have to provide reasoning. So we start to scaffold and slowly build that up. But we are giving students tools even at the kindergarten level all the way through 5th grade, and giving them lots of exposure to practice claim evidence reasoning statements. The reason why we do this too is because once the students get into middle school, it is expected for them to be able to successfully do a CER statement. And so we want to make sure that we are modeling, supporting, and practicing claim evidence reasoning statements with kids in the elementary classroom so that we're setting them up for success in middle school. They also have, or you also have, and students have interdisciplinary connections. And so these interdisciplinary connections are available for you at that unit level, as well as performance assessments. So we offer formative and summative assessments and performance assessments. So performance assessments, if that's something that's new to you, is going to be more of like a task-based assessment. It's not just like a multiple choice type question or an open response type question, but really in the performance assessments, what we do is we have students completing a task. And so here is where students are going to become writers for Science Monthly. And as they're coming in here, and they're writing for Science Monthly, they're going to have to be able to analyze pictures of plants and animals and identify patterns within families. They're going to have to read and write about frog that loses its toxicity when it's removed from the rainforest. And they're going to be able to read and write about trait variations of different Ecuadorian plants and animals. So that's what they're going to be tasked for doing in the performance assessment. So going back out now to that unit level and that overview of our unit, that gives us a great overview of planning for the unit of instruction as a teacher, and then what resources we're going to have access to throughout that unit of instruction, and how we can have our students coming back to gather evidence after every lesson of instruction to be able to support and answer that anchoring phenomena. You also have here the libraries. This is a really new, nice feature that TCI has just developed. You'll see that we have these videos. They're going to be coming for you in the beginning of the school year. But here is going to be our libraries that are going to host various videos, games, which is one of our great formative assessment tools, as well as biographies. When you're ready to teach the lesson that you're covering with your students, you're going to scroll down to this lesson of instruction. Today, we're going to be taking a look at lesson 4. Why do some members of a species survive and not others? Again, you're going to see here on the landing page as the teacher, you're going to see some planning resources available to you. The overview is going to walk you through kind of our lesson cycle, or how we're going to structure our instruction. So we begin every lesson with an essential question. Today's, why do some members of a species survive and not others, is what students are going to be focusing on. We begin with observing the phenomena. So you have that anchoring phenomena that we're looking at through the entire unit, but you also have your lesson level phenomena. So here we're going to start by analyzing a photograph, and then students are going to be introduced to the phenomena throughout this lesson, which they'll be able to explain at the end of your instruction. Then we have our hands-on investigation. And at the end of that, we're going to be able to make sense of the phenomena we were introduced to. You'll see that we've included videos. This is really helpful, especially if this is your first time doing it, a specific hands-on investigation. So Dawn's going to walk you through and model for you what this actual investigation is going to look like with your students. And then we're going to make sure that we're giving you objectives and then any advanced prep that needs to take place. At that lesson overview section is also where recommended reading is going to take place. So it lets you know that the student text is most helpful after the investigation. Next Gen often encourages you to have the students hands-on exploring and learning through their hands-on component first, and then reading the text to go deeper with that content. And so oftentimes you're going to see that's going to be the recommendation here in TCI. If you need any materials, it's going to be listed here. So it's going to let you know any materials you need to get from your materials bin, as well as if there's any teacher supplied materials such as scissors or construction paper, which we know a lot of us have access to in that elementary classroom. If you want to print anything out, you can, and all of that is going to be available to you here for print. As I mentioned, those lesson guides, if you prefer paper pencil, that is available for you under the materials tab that you can print that out. The next topic here is going to be learning progressions. This is great because it's going to let you know what your students have learned and what background knowledge they should have prior to you teaching this lesson, as well as what background knowledge you're required to teach them so that they then can expand and go deeper with this in the next grades. So it lets me know for this 3rd grade lesson, my students would have had access to this standard, to these performance expectations in 1st grade. And then it will tell me scaffolding wise earlier that things that I've done throughout the year of 3rd grade as well, to build upon students being able to now learn how inherited traits are passed from parents to offspring through genes and their environment. And then they're going to play a game that simulates being birds hunting moths. After this, it lets me know that in middle school, students need to understand that both natural and artificial selection results in certain traits, giving some individuals an advantage in surviving, reproducing, and leading to predominance of certain traits in a population. So I think this is really helpful for us to just kind of see where our students are coming in from, and then what we have to make sure we are setting them up for success that they are able to do in the future as well. We also provide differentiation for each of your lessons. The differentiation is going to be for your ELL learners, students with special needs, and advanced learners, and it is specific to the lesson of instruction. Under this enhanced learning tab, again, TCI understands the challenge of teaching science in the elementary classroom and just being an elementary teacher and challenging for time in general. And so what our developers have done is, rather than you having to spend time like looking for a brain pop video that's going to connect to it, our developers have found various websites that are interactive where you can come to and take a look at and see if any of this is going to be beneficial and you want to incorporate this into your lesson plans. So here we have a simulation. Sometimes it's going to be videos. Sometimes it's going to connect you to like museums. And then that's always going to be available for you under enhanced learning. When you scroll down, it's also going to give you children's lit connections. So if you wanted to create a classroom library where students can grab books during their free reading time and take a look at books that are tying into what we're covering in science, this is a great place to start. You can reach out to your school's media library or your media center or your community library, and you can see if they have any of these books on hand. You might choose to pull one of these books and do a read aloud with your kids. But rather than you spending time trying to find books that support the standards, TCI has done so, and that's going to be provided for you under these enhanced learning. The last section here for teachers in the planning box is science background. This is going to give you an overview of like this key science concepts that you're covering with your students, as well as the vocabulary that's going to be hit throughout this lesson, an overview of what that actual hands-on investigation is going to look like, and a quick overview of what each of the sections of the student text are going to be covering. So that is all available for you, the teacher. Before you even begin teaching with this lesson, you're going to want to take a look at all of these resources under this planning box. Once you've done so and you are ready to begin teaching, you're going to come, or even still prepping, you're going to come down here to our flexible lesson options. So as mentioned, we want to make sure that you have a variety of different resources to fit within your time of instruction in your classroom. And you can be very, like, you can pick and choose, and this might change from lesson to lesson. The first thing you're going to see here is our expository text with notes. We also have our fast track investigations with extensions. So here you even have a little bit of flexibility within this box where we give you, okay, this is absolutely the components that you have to hit on those performance expectations and that 3D learning. But then if your students need to go deeper, we have extensions provided for you in there too. So if you needed to go a little bit deeper with that content, you could. You have access to the complete lesson guide here that's going to take you start to finish of that entire overview that we took a look at. And then if you're really, really tight for time, we have a super simple science. This is going to incorporate videos and little mini lessons where it's still going to hit on those performance expectations for your kids, but it's going to be a little bit faster than if you're doing those hands-on investigations. Once you have taught, then this shows you how you can assess what you taught. So again, we have formative and summative assessments. The first one you're going to see here, the Show What You Know, is a great formative assessment that lives within our notebook. We also have the lesson game, which is another outstanding formative assessment tool that you can do with students. And that is a digital resource, but we can kind of brainstorm some ideas of how you can incorporate this whole group as well. And then the last thing that you see here is our TCI assessments. These are our summative assessments, and they are three-dimensionally aligned. And the TCI, our developers have created these 3D assessments, which is no easy feat if you've ever tried to create your own three-dimensional assessments, but they are customizable as well. So you can go in and modify and create accommodations to meet all the learners in your class if you wanted to go in and modify these. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to take a look at this fast track with extensions. This is going to give you an example of what a hands-on investigation is going to look like in your classroom. So when I click on the fast track with extensions, it's going to open up. I still have the same planning box. Those are all the resources we've already taken a look at. You'll see the next thing I have is teach with either the fast track with extensions or the fast track, which tells me this is about 52 minutes to get through this lesson, or I have the fast track with extension. So if I need to go deeper in the content, then that's going to take me 77 minutes. For pacing, we always want to break it up into minutes for you, because one of you might teach science 3 times a week for 20 minutes a day. Others might teach science every single day for 15 minutes or 20 minutes. And some of you might be like me. When we departmentalized in 5th grade, I had an hour for science every single day. And so because we know that that's going to vary from site to site, from state to state, we wanted to make sure that we make it easy for you. And so we're always going to give you pacing in terms of minutes so that you can fit it into your own schedule. As listed here, you're going to see it's going to follow that lesson cycle we introduced. So we always start by observing the phenomenon. It tells me that that's going to take about 5 minutes to do with my students. Then we're going to go into the hands-on investigation where students are going to model being birds hunting for moths. That portion of the investigation takes about 20 minutes. If you were going to go deeper with your kids, we're going to repeat the moth hunt, and then we're going to go in and share and analyze our data. If I'm doing that, I see that that's going to add in about 25 more minutes to my lesson of instruction if I wanted to do the extensions. For the fast track, we are going to interpret the data that we've gathered together as groups and as a class. We have an opportunity to go over vocabulary with our students, and then we're going to wrap up those key science concepts that we need to hit with our learners. You'll notice, remember, the recommended reading is that we do the investigation first, we're hands-on first, then we read. So the reading with notes is going to be towards the end of our lesson cycle here. And this is where students are going to go deeper with the content and the expository text. The show what you know is going to live here. Remember, that was one of the ways that I can assess what my students have learned. And so that show what you know is going to be available at the completion of the lesson. And then we always want to make sense of that phenomena we took a look at first. When you are teaching, and this kind of comes down to your personal preference, your students, their stream or what they see in their digital component, their digital platform is going to look exactly the same as what we see here. So when you're modeling and kind of identifying where students should be, in this expand sections where we are now, this is a great place to look. You also have the ability to choose to go into present slides. When I'm planning, my personal preference is to look at it in the expand sections because I can see this pacing over here. And that allows me to kind of really plan what my week is going to look like with my kids. But for my personal preference, I like coming in here and hitting present with slides. So it's going to kind of come down to your own preference. So for today, I'm going to go ahead and show you presenting with slides. What that's going to do is it's going to bring up a page that is interactive and that also is going to still follow that same lesson cycle. So we're going to start with observing the phenomena. So at every single lesson, we're going to introduce the lesson level phenomena. So we see this visual here, we see this picture, and it lets us know that many animals have fur that is similar to the color of their environment that they live in. Can we think of other examples where we have seen or experienced, whether in real life, at the zoo, in our own communities, or in pictures that we've seen where other animals have fur that is similar to their environment? So students are going to have this discussion looking at the visual. Then we provide a video. So as we're watching this video, we're going to think of the phenomena. Most squirrels match their surroundings. It's very rare to find a pure white squirrel. What questions do you have about this phenomena? So again, we want students making connections with what they're learning. Have you ever seen a squirrel that looks this color? If not, what do the squirrels look like where you live? Or what squirrels have you encountered? Majority of the time, students are going to say they've never seen an albino squirrel, and that, you know, most of the squirrels they see are brown and kind of blends in with the trees that the squirrels are living in. So we're going to introduce this phenomena, talk about like real life connections with the students, and then also what questions we have here. Next, we have either a find it or a do it. So this is going to vary from lesson to lesson. But again, making these connections for the students. So this one, are there squirrels near you? And do most of them match their surroundings? Again, some of those questions you may have naturally had earlier with the kids. Once I click out, that's going to take me back to this landing page because I've completed that observing the phenomena. Our next section is going to come in and take a look at modeling being birds hunting for moths. So when you do this with your class, you will have 3 different environments or backgrounds for your students. You have an all black, all white, and then a newspaper print environment. And so for every single environment, there's going to be 2 groups that are standing around it. And we see that represented with the images here. What this is going to do is we are going to start stations and 3 different rotations of stations. At each environment or each background, 1 student from each group is going to be identified to play or be the bird hunting moths. So that means at every environment, 2 students are going to be hunting for moths at the same time. When you are the bird, I would always have my students kind of turn their back because they're very likely to kind of peek and look. But when you're the bird, you're going to close your eyes or turn around, and then the rest of the groups are going to spread out the moths that are available for them in this background. When you say go, students have 15 seconds to gather and collect as many moths as they can. There's a little bit of a challenge to it. Just like birds who are hunting at an eagle-eye view up in the air and they swoop down to get their food, we don't want students to just be walking around on the ground eating moths. They have to kind of mimic and simulate going back up in the air. So whenever I do this with teachers too, this is your opportunity to really get some exercise in because it's basically doing squats. So your students have to come upright and then squat down, and they can only gather 1 moth at a time for each like swoop down that they're doing as the bird. You can take it a step further and you can provide different types of beaks. I've done it where I've had my students use tweezers to kind of simulate a beak, and it just adds another element of becoming those birds hunting for moths. And you can even simulate various beaks. So some beaks are softer than others. And so you can really take this how far you want to with your kids. But anyway, in 15 seconds, students are going to gather as many moths as you can. You'll see the 3 different backgrounds listed here are those environments, as well as the moths that are available. So the moth, there's the same species of moth at every station, but they have 3 different colors. And so they're going to have black, white, and newspaper print moths at each of these stations. So when we're doing this moth hunt, we also are going to be taking a look at identifying patterns. So we're going to collect data, and we're going to be able to identify the patterns that we think are going to be true at each of these environments. And we want to make sure we're making the connection with our learners too, that does one round of this give us enough data and enough evidence to say that this is a pattern we're going to see every time. And so anytime you see these plus signs, it's going to give you talking points with your class as well, if that's something that's beneficial or helpful for you. So we have now had an opportunity, the students at one of their environments, one of the backgrounds, is able to simulate being birds hunting for moths. But we need to gather more data to be able to really successfully say if this is a pattern we're observing or not. So we're going to repeat the simulation. Every single student's going to have an opportunity to be a bird hunting at every single environment. So they're going to represent and be birds 3 different times in the 3 different environments. We're gathering and collecting our evidence for every single round and every single group member in our group. And then we're going to come together and we are going to analyze and take a look at what that data looks like. Once we've done that, we're going to identify the patterns that we notice. So at each station was one type of a bird or moth most likely to be caught or less likely to be caught. So taking a look here at this newspaper print, go ahead and share for me in chat, which type of a moth do you think is going to be more likely to be caught on that newspaper print environment? And which one is going to be less likely to be caught? What predictions do you have? What do you think? In this newspaper print environment, which of those most likely, so Chloe said she thinks the most likely to be caught is going to be white. And then it's very easy to see, less likely to be caught is going to be that newspaper print moth. They really even blend in, and it's almost hard, really difficult to be able to see these in this environment. So as your students are doing this, they're going to be collecting their data. What does that data collection look like? I'm going to share for you real quick in our chat the journal for this lesson, so you can take a look at what the print journal looks like, and we're going to also take a look at what it looks like in the digital subscription. So I just shared our journal with you, and I'm going to pull it over here. This is a journal for the same lesson we're taking a look at. You'll see that it's going to follow the same format that we saw in the digital teacher platform. We're going to take a look at these images. It shows us a screenshot or a snapshot of our phenomena with the squirrel. This is what it's going to look like where students are going to be collecting and gathering the evidence and their data. So students, you're going to list all of the different group members here, and they're going to be keeping track and gathering the data for how many moths were caught, and each species of moth were caught at each of the environments. Then we're going to come in and we're going to interpret this data. So we want to come in and make sure that we are identifying those patterns that were noticed initially in here. So this is the journal. Once you've gone through and you've taken a look at the sharing of the data, then we have an opportunity to review vocabulary. This is interactive. So if you have an interactive whiteboard, your students can come up here and they can drag and drop. You can pass around a wireless mouse. This is what the mouse that I still use in my classroom. It's still my mouse today, but you can pass that around your room if you don't want to get kids up and moving. And then you guys can check and see if you are on track with your vocabulary. So reviewing that vocabulary and then wrapping up our science concepts. So this is what Next Gen likes to call a science talk. I'm not proficient in hosting science talks. If you have science background and you want to just guide a science talk with your kids, you don't have to open up this page. If you need a little support for having a science talk with your kids, then here is where TCI is going to give you some guiding questions. This again is going to be in wrapping up and making sure that our students understand those performance expectations and the 3D learning. So in the simulation, the science talk, we want to make sure that we understand that all members of a species are not equally likely to survive. Why or why not? And then taking a look at how the background changing is going to impact which moths would be most likely to survive, as well as taking a look at the pattern of moth survival. And so this is going to walk you through a science talk with your kids. And then the other formative assessment tool that you have here is going to be wrapping up. So, oh, sorry, that was in the science talks. So then we're going to make sense of that phenomenon. So again, we are going to show the students the video that we took a look at the beginning of instruction for this lesson. And now that the students have done the hands-on investigation where they modeled birds hunting for moths, as well as reading the student text and answering any questions along with that, now students have the ability to be able to come in and explain this lesson level phenomena. So now we can explain that most squirrels match their surroundings, and it's very rare to find a pure white squirrel. So that walks us through an actual investigation with our students. To give you an idea of what that looks like on this student level, you can also kind of come in and you can see I have some student work done in here. I have a model student in my class. And so in the student subscription, it's going to look exactly the same as what we took a look at here with our teacher subscription. As I mentioned, it's going to be laid out the exact same. So when I come over here to the investigation with notebook and a student subscription, I'm now logged in as Luca. I can come in and I can see, if I go to the correct lesson, I can come in and I can see the phenomena and I can see the data collection that is done throughout this lesson. As you notice, it looks exactly like what we saw on the teacher side. So when I, as a student, click in and observe the phenomena, it's going to give me the same exact pictures that we saw in the print journal that I shared with you guys in that link, as well as on the teacher side of things. Students can capture their questions here. You'll see that it is time-stamped. And so it'll let you know exactly when the students did that. If you are not on Eastern time, it will be time-stamped to your time zone. And then when students are coming in and they are gathering the data, they're going to be able to come in here and to gather and say, you know, whoever is in their group, how many moths they collected for each of these different environments. And students can come in here and can identify and gather their data here. So that's an example of what that's going to look like on the student side of things. Taking a look at the text with notes, again, that's also found in the student journal that I shared with you and the link in chat. But if students are looking at this digitally and they take a look with the text with notes, they're going to see that they have the same exact resources as available in the journal. And so coming in, students will take a look at the various sections, and then they have an opportunity to answer the note questions that go along with the text and use text evidence to support their findings. A couple of resources that we've built in here to support your learners. They can select reading levels. So you have access to two different Lexile ranges. Lexile A is going to be written on your grade level Lexile range. And then Lexile B is going to be a 25% lower Lexile range. So this level A is written within a third grade Lexile range, and level B is going to be 25% lower. You can have the text read aloud. So if you have students that are emerging readers or students that are reading below grade level, or maybe they are ELL students, they can have the text read aloud.
1. Survival is important to organisms. This Jack.
And you can also modify this resource. I've now just muted it. So if I'm wanting to have my students reading aloud with me to the ticker and I'm working on fluency, or if I have a student who is working on fluency themselves, you can modify this resource by muting it, and it's going to go along with the ticker, or they can listen to the auditory as well. Additionally, you have the main idea finder. So when I click on the star right here, it's going to bold in blue the main idea in the passage. This is huge because no matter how much I worked on main idea with my fifth graders, they struggled. They wanted to always say it's the topic sentence. And a lot of times it is, but it's not always going to be the topic sentence. And so you'll see here that it can be bolded in blue for the main idea of the passage. I have some teachers that like to come in and front load instruction. So they'll log into a student account. Like right now, I'm in Luca's account, and you can highlight these main idea So if my student is maybe not reading on grade level, and I know that when they're supposed to be reading independently or in small group, they might get overwhelmed. I can come in and highlight these key sections that they need to make sure they're understanding. And that way I can now, accommodate a need that they have. And so students can also, as I just modeled here, highlight in their own text. Additionally, they can capture notes. They can either type their notes or they can copy and paste from the text and add that to their notes here. No matter how they highlight or they capture notes, all of this is captured under their references with my notes over here on the left side. So if they are reviewing at the end of a lesson, if you are giving them a summative assessment, it'll capture any highlights or notes that they take for each of the different sections of text. A couple of other things to take a look at in here. When you are in the student text, if the student needs to define vocabulary terms, it'll define it. If you're grades 3 through 5, it'll define it right in the text for the students. If you are kindergarten, when you click on the vocabulary term, I see the vocabulary term survive here. If you're kindergarten, it's going to pop up a visual representation of the definition. First and second grade, it's going to pop up a visual representation and a written definition. And then as mentioned, grade 3 through 5, it's going to define it right in the text for students. Students can also come down here and they have a check for understanding. So after they've read, they can come in here and they can complete this interactive tool and they can check and see where they are in their learning. Or you can incorporate and do this whole group if you're wanting to see all together where the students are with their learning of a section. Looking over here under the left navigation for our students, we also see that vocabulary cards are listed here. And so again, same as we talked about the vocabulary terms in the text, kindergarten, if you flip this over, there's a visual representation. First and second, there's a written definition and a visual representation. 3 through 5, it's going to give you a written definition here. The lesson games are great formative assessment tools. So these games, no matter which lesson you're in, I like to say if you have kids who play Minecraft, we have different skins. So here we see the building blocks. No matter which grade you are, K-5, it's going to be a written question for your students and it's multiple choice. They can have it read aloud to them. So if you have, again, emerging readers or students that are reading below grade level, they can pop headphones on and they can still do this formative assessment tool. But what they're going to do is they're going to have 2 opportunities to find success. If they get it correct on the first try, they earn 1 point. If they get it correct on the second try, they earn half a point. If they don't get it correct on either of those tries, it will tell them what the correct answer is and they earn 0 points. As students are doing this digitally, it will keep track of their score and give them their score. It'll also go directly over to the teacher gradebook. So if you do have students utilizing these lesson games independently in their device, you can have it graded for you automatically. If, let's say, you are not having time to get students onto a device, or maybe you don't have devices one-to-one that day for kids, you can utilize this whole group to still assess and see where your students are in their learning. Some ways to do this is this can become your exit ticket or your bell ringer. And you can just show one question up on the board. Students can write it on a Post-it note or an index card. You can do this. My son's kindergarten teacher, she used TCI and she taught them sign language. So she would just have them hold up sign language to show them what they thought their answer was directly from their seat. Whole group still able to quickly scan and assess and be like, yep, my kids get this. I know I can move on. Or they might take a look at this and be like, ooh, okay, nope, we're all struggling on that. We need to reteach this whole group. Or I can let you know if you need to pull small group. Whiteboards are another great way to do this. If you need to get your kids up and moving, 4 corners is another way. So I just wanted to kind of highlight that while we have this amazing tool developed digitally, there's a lot of ways which you can take these resources and incorporate them whole class instruction and make it interactive and engaging with your kids. If you wanted to give them a break from a device, or maybe you don't have a device accessible for them that day. So that is what it looks like in the student class. I'm going to go ahead back and return to my teacher subscription now and really quickly just show you what that work looks like. So here I see Luca. He wrote in his interactive notebook and in his journal in the digital platform. So I can come in here and I can see the answer that Luca gathered. Again, it's timestamped for me, the teacher. I can provide a comment or a stamp or a sticker for them. So if I need more information, I might say, please use complete sentences. I'm sure that's not something that we say to our kids all the time. And I can give feedback to my students, or I can go ahead and say, hey, yep, you're right on track. Now you know you're good to move on by sharing these stamps or these stickers with them. And so you can come in here and see and analyze the answers, and you're also going to be provided answer keys if your students are doing this digitally in the grade book. The other thing to take a look at here in grades is I can see their lesson score. So I can drill in and see Luca's score himself. I'm able to see if he was able to find success on the second try, or if he was not able to find success and he's struggling with any specific question. I can also take a look at the lesson games. Now, keep in mind, I only have one set of data here, but when I have a whole entire class and I'm taking a look at that set of data with my kids, I can come up to the trends here. My goal in my classroom is 70% mastery. So in my settings in my account, I've set this to 70%. TCI's default is 50. But what it does is it bolds in red any of these question strands where less than 70% of my students got it correct on the first try. So imagining that maybe this one says like 66%. I know I'm not going to reteach that whole group. I might pull small group for that. If this one says 25%, yep, you better believe I'm reteaching that question whole group with my kids to make sure that we better understand it. The last thing I want to take a look at, show you, is taking a look at our assessments. So if you look over here on your left navigation, you'll see assessments. You can access that when you're in your lesson level as well. TCI developers have created 2 assessments for you that live already done. They're 3-dimensionally aligned, and they are for English and for Spanish. So you can click right in here where it says TCI test. You also have the ability to create your own test from scratch using our library of questions and our database, as well as platforms for you to be able to create your own. For today, what I'm going to do really quickly is I'm going to go ahead and use this TCI test just to show you what this would look like. I'm going to come to this actions for English and select use this test. It's going to take just a second because we do have a bunch of stimuli in here for students to analyze. And so it takes just a moment for this to load. But what you are going to see when we log in here is those 3-dimensionally aligned assessment questions. And again, it is completely customizable and able for you to create accommodated versions to meet the needs of your learners. So here, these are all the questions that our developers have created. If you don't like a question, or if it doesn't meet your need, you can throw it away by selecting this trash button here. As mentioned, they are completely customizable. So let's say maybe you have a student with a 504 and IEP, and maybe it says they have to have 2 distractors eliminated. You can come in and create this modified version of assessments for your students. If we have not included a stimuli and you want to include one, you may upload one from your computer for any question, or you can change it if you want to use a different set of stimuli than what TCI has done. For any of the questions, you can come in and you can change the question, change the verbiage, anything you might see fit. You also have the ability to come in here and add questions from our question bank. So I'm going to go ahead, just for our time's sake for today, and select add all questions so I can show you what that looks like. So again, this is going to take you to our TCI question bank. You can use these filters over here on the left side. If you're wanting to create maybe a unit assessment or a multiple chapter assessment, you can come in and you can select other lessons to pull questions from there as well. You also can filter it by who it's created by, what the response type is, the source. So remember those lesson games, if I wanted to pull in a question, because I retaught this whole group, I can pull in the questions from my lesson game. It will also give you, if it's created by our TCI developers, the DOK level of question it is, as well as if it has any stimulus or if it's a performance task, you can tag those. I'm going to go ahead and collapse all of these different lessons just so it's a little cleaner. Taking a look at the questions that our developers have created. So the first level of questions that you're going to see here, it'll again let you know the DOK level, but you're also going to see those NGSS design lesson assessments. So when you're taking a look at those, you'll see it'll identify, is it a 3D question? Is it a 2D question? You can hover over this and it'll identify the science and engineering practices, cross-cutting concepts and engineering, cross-cutting concepts and disciplinary core ideas that are covered in this question. So you can know you are 3D assessing your students. And so again, you can come in here, see if it's a 1D, 2D, or 3D question. You're going to see within these assessments, that not only are we giving them like multiple choice, true, false type questions, but also thinking like a scientist, where we're going to give them simulations of an investigation where they're going to have to analyze data and interpret, and then they're going to have to be able to answer these questions that go along with an investigation type question. And so you can add any of these questions into your assessment. You also can create your own. So I'm just going to go ahead and add, that one's already added to the assessment. But I'm going to go ahead and here and go to next. Anytime you see here that says created by other teachers, sometimes it might say like CA teacher, that's a teacher from California that shared their own question out with you. If you like it, you can add that in. And it'll also let you know where these sources are. So I'm just going to go ahead and add this one in just to model that for you real quick. The next area you're going to take a look at is taking a look in the summative assessments, where you have the ability, we give you the prompt types. You can create and add your own questions in here. So if you're creating a multiple choice question, this is what the prompt type is going to look like. And you can share your question out. If you like your question and you want to share it out, this is going to share it with all of TCI community. So I live in Georgia, mine would say GA teacher. It's not going to give your name or your district. Or you can create questions and share it with your district only. So if you guys are having to give common assessments and you know that this is a question strand that is needed for your state and for your district, I can share that with my district only. That way we don't all have to reinvent the wheel and come up with the same question. It lives in our question bank. And it's going to share that resource with other teachers inside my district. You have the ability to print, to share the test, to assign it digitally. If you assign it digitally to your students, it's going to automatically be graded unless it's an open response type, and then you have to grade and evaluate that, but it's going to save you time on grading. All right, guys, I gave you a ton of information and we have just a couple of minutes left. I know Kelsey's been taking a look here at our question and answers, but I just want to see if you guys have any additional questions, if there's anything that I need to address in our time that we have left.
Well, I was actually wondering, could you go back to the assessments,
Kelsey,
Laura?
I had you muted. No, I don't.
Oh, that's okay. Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Okay. Can you go back to the assessments? Because there's a couple things. There's a question that Chloe just asked, and Tracy had asked me a question.
Yes.
When, if you go back, when they do the share, like the share the test within my district, say you wanted to create a common assessment, or as an admin, you created one for your team and you press share it with my district, where would that live? Kind of what does that look like? And then Chloe asked, while you're on this page, how do I print an assessment?
Okay, perfect.
Just, you can show those two things.
So I modeled how to share a question with your district, and I'll show you where that goes in just a moment. But as Kelsey mentioned, you can share the entire assessment too. So if I know, like maybe during my PLC time, all of my third grade teachers were together and one person is building this in their TCI account, they can share this test with their district only. And that way we can all go in and pull that. Before I show you where that lives, to print an assessment under this manage box is where you're going to be able to print your assessment and print an answer key for your own records as well. So if you do have students that need paper pencil, or you just would like to do this as a paper pencil, you can. Once you have saved your test, it's going to ask you to give it a name. Once you have saved your test and you go back out to those assessments, which my internet is slowing down and I know we have limited time, so I'm going to skip through that. When you're at that assessment level here, this is where it says my district, this is where those district shared assessments, or if you're a coordinator with your district, where those are going to live. In our TCI account right now, we don't have any shared, but if you did, your teachers would be able to drill in here just like I did on the TCI assessment, and they would be able to pull up those shared common assessments within your district. Any other questions?
As of right now, that covers the questions that are asked in the chat and the Q&A, but I know we've got a little bit of time left. So if anyone else has one, or if there's something that you want to see again, or Laura to just kind of showcase once more, please add it, either the chat or the Q&A, and we'll make sure we address it before we go. And while you're thinking of those and typing those, I know Laura's going to share with you about just more things that we've got coming up.
So I know summer's coming to an end faster for some of us than others. But when we want to make sure that you are supported every step of the way, getting ready to get back into the classroom. So this was a great starting point for you guys to kind of see and get a reminder, a refresher about getting started with TCI in the classroom. We do have back to school webinars that live in our in your digital platform, but you also can access them in the resources that Kelsey's going to share with you. And so these are recorded webinars. Today's webinar is going to be available for you there too. Also, we have a self-paced guided course. So I showed you a whole lot of resources today. Our self-paced course is going to walk you through step-by-step where to find and navigate all of those resources. And then lastly, our teacher Facebook group. We also have one for Twitter as well. They're great places for you guys to make sure that you go ahead and join, because you're going to be able to interact and speak with teachers across the country that are using the curriculum and brainstorm and kind of utilize that as another, idea to bounce your ideas off of. So Kelsey is sharing that information with you guys, I believe. Tracy says, last question, where is that manage button? Can you
obvious she was asking me about in the assessment area, like where you go to share that district test. Also, I see that Mary Kate, you asked a question about certificate of completion. Yes, after today, everybody will get probably I think it's my team said tomorrow, they should get a certificate that gives you an hour PD, so you can take that and use that. And then also a recording that you're welcome to share out with your colleagues of this session today. So that way you have both of those things available to you. So you should look out in an email tomorrow afternoon is what my team says that you should get that by. Sorry, go for it. Under assessments, that like in the assessment generator, when you were going to manage it to share it out, where did that live? I think that's what Tracy was asking there in the chat.
So under assessments, I'm just going to go back into our assessment generator real quick. Bear with me. It's going to take another 30 seconds or so. And so Tracy, just to clarify, you're wanting to know where that manage button is to share that assessment with other teachers. Okay.
And she's talking like as an admin, creating like a common assessment, I think, and like putting that out there. So like, hey, every first grade teacher could go in there and grab this test.
So when you're under that, you start with that insert question. This is going to be like the question bank. Then teachers can create their own question, or you can. And under manage is where you have share this entire test. So here you can click share. You can click teach it. You can share it with everybody or with your district only.
And I will tell you, that's something that I used to do just within my grade level like cohort. I would just put that out there and everybody could take it and use that we had to do common quarterly assessments, and it worked great for that because everyone could just kind of take that and use it and go.
Well, thank you guys so much. If you have any other questions, don't hesitate to stay on. Kelsey and I will make sure that we are available to answer your questions. However,
Absolutely.
Our time has kind of come to an end, and I want to respect your time. So thank you guys so much for coming in and joining us today. Again, we will stay on and answer any questions if you have them. If not, enjoy the last few weeks for some of you of summer. For others, enjoy the next month. And I hope you guys have a great school year next year.
Absolutely.
Tracy, yes, it'll allow you to create and insert questions. You can't manage inside somebody else's account unless you have access to their account. But you can create common assessments. If you're saying to your team, like, hey, everybody needs to be giving this assessment for this lesson, you can provide those and have them in there. That way teachers are able to pull that assessment that you created and give the same exact assessment. And you know that it's done to your liking, but you can't manage inside other teachers' account.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to stop our recording.